All right, it's showtime, folks. That's what the Streamlabs tells me. So welcome everybody to the Watches with Dennis live stream. ToT, this or that. This is the fourth ToT. Tony, you've made it onto all the ToTs. David, I think you've only missed one ToT.
ToT veteran.
That was our most crowded ToT. That was the full like tater tot set of ToTs.
Yeah, that one was like there was a lot of people.
It was, and I added 2 additional ToTs. I added a ToT number 6 and then an extra credit ToT, and it went a really, yeah, I called it extra credit because it was a watch versus a pinball machine. So I didn't want to count it as like a real ToT because I felt like I was kind of cheating basically, but that's what I did. And it went over well. People have been asking for the ToTs. I was thinking maybe about doing one in November, but very, very busy with work and everything else. And so we're wedging one in here at the end of the year. And so let's go ahead and do some introductions. And then we've got a couple of little games that we will play before we do the ToT game, but it's all just going to be fun. There might be a lot of hate coming at Tony. We'll have to see. He's basically
I don't know why.
He's basically set it all up for sheer despair and destruction. It's very, very exciting. But let's go ahead and do the introductions.
So much drama.
So, Dave, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so I'm David Dennis. I am one of the co-hosts of Silverball Chronicles, a pinball history podcast, which we found on the Pinball Network at pinball.network, where you can swing on over to silverballchronicles.com to check out our archive and our Patreon and all that other good stuff.
And I have a link to both your show and your Patreon in the description. So if you get a whole bunch of Patreon members, you can thank me later.
That's right. I'll send the commission your way, good friend.
Yeah, but convert it to US first. And welcome Nicholas, who I have to approve of his YouTube thing, because if he's saying he's from Japan, he's got the Japanese episode of The Simpsons represented in the icon. So so Tony, you want to do your he's looking away. He's like,
I'm fine. It's nothing.
You're looking away.
What's going on, Tony? Noise. How are you doing? Oh, that's all right. That's good. You can't hear it. That's good. All right. Well, I'm Tony Kurkowski. I am here for my fourth ToT. I am co-host of the Eclectic Gamers Podcast, and
all around
happy to be here.
Mm-hmm. Don't worry. There are links to the Eclectic Gamers Podcast in the description as well. So folks,
I figured that was just like naturally there. The links would exist.
Not always. I'm usually just promoting the watch content until we do these sort of fun episodes, and then all the pinball people crawl out of the woodwork. Speaking of pinball people, one of the channel members, Scott, who supports the channel at 99 cents a month. That's the only tier I have on the watch stuff. If you want to pay more, you got to do Patreon. Saying, "Who could hate Tony?" Good evening, gentlemen. The band is back. I've had a lot of good feedback with Tony and David interacting, which makes sense. A Midwesterner and a Canadian Easterner combined, I feel, has a very.
We represent all of the wide array here. We've got glasses, mustache,
right?
Canadian, American. We've got a big mixture. Although we all have the same headset this time because I went with the big headset.
You did. I'm wearing my little baby Logitech. The one I usually plug in analog is now over with the PodTrack 4 with the fancy recording equipment that I keep in the kitchen to do the podcast. Thanks to the power of Patreon, we did some significant upgrades, but I need analog headphones for that equipment. So my nice set goes in there, and this is one of my mini USB sets. Mini being I have 2 USB sets. But I see Not a Watch Snob has joined us. Welcome, Not a Watch Snob, saying Tony. I'm sure he said it just like that. That's how he typed it. And I think everyone knows who I am, unless they just found this because it was on YouTube Live and they were searching for watches or anything. But I'm Dennis, host of Watches with Dennis, and this is ToT or This or That. It is a game where I will present a series of matchups for us to consider. And I'll do polls live, so I'll be bouncing around a little bit. You might hear me typing in the background. So people who are actually watching the stream will be able to vote along and say, like, which of the 2 watches would they prefer. But we're going to do a couple of other games before that. But before that, I guess we should go ahead, because it is a live show, and do a wristwatch check. Dave, are you wearing a watch?
I am wearing a watch.
What watch are you wearing?
We are looking at a
Casio.
Yes, a Casio A100 WE, or the Ripley.
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 Get away from her.
this.
That's right. Made famous in the movie Aliens.
I love this watch. I picked this watch up. This was one of my secondhand shop surfing adventures. I went into one, and somebody must have blown out an entire Casio collection.
Yeah, you sent me like a photo every day for like 4 days in a row or something, 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. So I went with the Ripley. I also went with the classic black. I can't recall the model number at the moment. I think it's a 10W. And then there's the classic 31s or 91s, W91s, the silver and the black. So there was like, and I got them all for like $200 Canadian. So I'm like, how could you not have a god tier watch?
That's true. A lot of people, Casio, the god tier, and Casio, people forget Casio's more than G-Shock. It got a lot of really iconic watches beyond the G-Shock line.
Yeah. The only one I'm missing is a good calculator Casio, and then I think I'm done with the Casios in general.
Yeah, you probably got a whole watch box full of them at that point, because I think that puts you around a half dozen. Which I kind of think of as a standard watch box size. Yeah. Tony, anything?
Yes, I've got can't see it because of my new
bright light. That light's pretty powerful.
New light. There it is. It's an Islander Flieger Type B. Let me see if I cover the light a little bit. I got a new light for Christmas that lights my desk up very nicely, but it does kind of blinds the camera.
I'm jealous.
If it's at the right, it lets me kill all the background lights, and it works real good. It's got a nice warm tone to it. But yeah, no, this is by Islander. It's a Flieger Type B style. I love the looks of them. I've talked about liking Dennis's Flieger Type B multiple times in the past, and I'm very much a what you would call minimalist when it comes to the watch styles, as most of my watch collection shows, with the bull of a hack and everything else.
Mm-hmm. And I actually had my Flieger on yesterday and earlier today, but then I swapped it midday over to, and I've taken off my wrist. So I finally reconfigured this is the Glashütte Original Panamatic Lunar. I finally reconfigured the moon phase on it. So it's always a bit of a chore. So I didn't.
But now you know where the tide is. Thank God.
Yeah. Tides go in, tides go out. I probably wouldn't, and by probably, I mean, I wouldn't notice at all if the moon phase was wrong. It's a manual moon phase set too. So it's kind of like the instructions are really, I've never had a moon phase before. So the instructions are super simple. It's line up on a full moon date and then click once per day after that. And you will be right, because the moon phase is like on a 29.5 day cycle or something. So it's just kind of like a lot of using a little toothpick and going push, push, push on a little button. It's got one of those flush buttons. But I actually like the big date aspect of it more, which is like, hey, no Cyclops, which, is very polarizing, but real easy to read the date because each digit's its own disc. So that's one of the things I actually like about it a lot. So I went and threw that on this evening. It's on a third-party strap. And before we get to our first game, I do see Scott asked a question in the chat about watch winders. Are they an unnecessary luxury, or does it extend service intervals? My opinion, Dave, do you have an opinion on watch winders?
I do. I can speak to it being an unnecessary luxury. If it has a lot of complications, you're going to want to keep that thing rolling. I mean, I just have the automatics I have are like Hamilton automatics that just have the day date or things like that. And I'll take it off on a Friday, and then by like Monday or Tuesday, if I don't wear it Monday morning, I'm like, oh God. So, and I do very much enjoy, the winding and the setting and the whatever in the morning. It's fun, sadly fun. But when you get to something that like Dennis is wearing and you've got moon phases or something like that, if that thing stops ticking, that is like hell. Because then you're like, oh, I got to set it. And then you're like, well, I'll just wear one of my other watches instead of the other. You know what I mean? So, but when you get into like watch winders, you don't want to see a billion different kinds of like fancy watch. Like one or two is perfectly fine. But if you're one of those people that has like a whole wall of them, that's just crazy. Crazy. As for the service interval, that's a good question.
Yeah. Tony, you have any thoughts on watch winders?
I think if you've got a massive amount of complications, it's worthwhile, but otherwise, just set it. It doesn't seem like it's worth it, especially considering what some of them cost and how annoying it has to be to set them up. and find storage spaces for like a wall of them.
Yes, and I will say real quick, good evening to Kevin, who's joined us, as well as Gizmotic, who knows the David Dennis quite well. So I align very closely with both of you. Basically, I don't have a watch winder, so I guess it tells you about the level of import that I ascribe it. If I had a perpetual calendar watch, I would definitely suggest getting a watch winder. Those are an extreme chore to keep synced up. They're like not designed for you to constantly be messing with them. So that would be the first thing I would say. In terms of the service interval, no, I do. A watch winder does not extend the service interval on the watch. In fact, it's arguable that it would actually put more wear on the watch because it's running constantly. Though with modern lubrications, that really shouldn't be a major issue. I think the most important thing that I would advise is you do want to, much like a car engine, you do not want your watch just to sit dead in a drawer for years, especially if it's not been serviced recently and it's using older non-synthetic lubricants. My personal suggestion, and I don't have a ton of science to back this, is I would make sure you would wind them at least twice a year. And that way you want them to move, and that's because the lubrication will settle. So you want to let them move so that all the parts remain well lubricated. But other than that, you don't need, there's no value like service wise to keep them running. They shouldn't get worse because the mainspring's not under tension anymore. It shouldn't make things any worse. All that said, if you put them on a winder, it's not like you've shortened your service, like your service intervals now every 3 years instead of don't worry about it. It's like you can do it. It's sort of,
I think you'd be talking maybe months difference. Like, ooh, greetings from Aruba. Oh my goodness.
Yes, that's Jason. He was on our last ToT. This ToT, I did not send out a doodle poll for multiple because it was like, what can we cram in the last week? And Tony and David were like, we can do it. I was like, all right, we'll do 3. Especially so I can test a couple of games out because I've been leading up to that. Like one of the things that people have written in, as some of the people in the chat indicate, David and Tony, there are a number of people who watch, who are pinball people, or they know us from pinball. And it's like, okay, well, so I had a few requests for, can you borrow some other pinball podcast games and make them wristwatch games? And I was like, absolutely, because those games are simple and they're easy to manipulate into being for watches.
So they're totally different games. Totally different.
Yes. Yeah.
The names are totally different.
Yes. So the first one I want to start with was one that didn't require any graphics for. So that's why I went ahead and just messaged David and Tony today so they could think about it ahead of time. And that is, there is a game called Drain It or Save It from a now resumed pinball podcast called Special and Lit. But I'm going to call it Set It or Forget It, because set it and forget it is a common phrase regarding quartz watches. So, and I'll go ahead and start it off in case you guys didn't have a chance.
And also crock pots.
And I will have a poll that I'll type up here in the chat while you all are discussing it. But the one I wanted to present as a set it or forget it is limited edition releases of watches. And for me, it's a forget it. Like, I wish they were gone. I think it is we see it in all sorts of hobbies. You know, it happens in comic books. It happens in pinball, happens in collector's edition video games. It's the biggest pile of FOMO crap. And I just absolutely hate it. Obviously, you're limited by your production capabilities. We see this with Rolex all the time, right? They aren't making enough of a watch. They're not putting a hard limit on it. But Seiko just came out with some celebration of their 110th anniversary with a 5,000 limit run watch, which is dumb. That's way too many limits. And we see it in pinball. What's Jersey Jack's LE count? 5,000 pinball machines. They didn't even sell 5,000 GNR LEs. It's just like, so for me, that's a forget it. So Dave, what are your thoughts on the LE run? Are you a fan? Are you a set it, or are you a forget it?
I'm going to go with set it, but I'm going to caveat my set it. I like the idea of limited editions. I love the idea of something really cool and exclusive and different, and it's for a set period of time and you have to purchase it. But my caveat is I would probably never buy a limited edition watch, because limited edition watches they're so silly, because they are just cheap FOMO stuff Do I like to consume the media around them? Do I like to see the images? Am I interested in it? What is the design and what materials are they using? Absolutely. But am I in the market for something like that? Absolutely not. But I'm gonna set it.
Okay, so Dave disagrees with me, and I actually see Jason in the chat. It's like he wrote that when I was talking, not when you were talking. So obviously he added on that he likes limited editions for many reasons. And I have owned a limited edition. My Ming Messina Lab was a limited edition, and I guess I did. There was one aspect I liked about it. It helped when I traded it in, but that probably had more to do with the brand that was doing it than the fact that it was limited in and of itself. But Tony. Set it or forget it. What do you think of LEs on in watches?
I'm going to go with forget it, just because I'm not a big fan of LEs overall in anything. I think it should be one of those things that if people want it and you offer it, it should be out there. I will say, though, if you're going to have LEs need to be limited, not 5,000, not 2,000. That needs to be sub 500. On anything. If you're going to make something that is an actual limited edition and you make more than 500 of them, it's not a limited edition. If you make 5,000 of them, that's, I mean, really, there's just no way. It makes no sense. You're just slapping a name on it for no other reason than to say it's limited.
I mean, and there's an interesting discussion to be had about like how to properly do an LE. But obviously I took the very polarizing, strong stance of just getting rid of them entirely.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had 2 forget it's and 1 set it, and I will go ahead and end the poll because I did have that up for our folks. And the poll results were forget it won with 2/3 of the vote. So, and set it was the other 1/3. Yes. Yes. Rigged. It was rigged. I did vote. I was one of those votes. So I see brand headlight says, take the Alpine Eagle as an example. Jason said, yes, with Tony, limited edition should be truly limited. And I do agree. Even though I'm not a fan of limited, if you're going to do it right. Do it serious. Don't be like on paper. And in fact, I think we had someone in the chat here who, yes, it was Nicholas. Welcome to the live stream, Nicholas. Said he likes the Zodiac way, and I did have a Zodiac, and this is something that I'm okay with this, where they don't do a hard LE run. It's like they have a window of you can buy this watch, and then they discontinue the color.
Omega's a lot like that. They've got
that what was it, the CK 189 or whatever, that kind of throwback watch.
They do Olympics ones.
Well, those Olympics ones were, I mean. Yeah, I don't know if they do a hard limit on, like Omega does both. Sometimes they do a raw hard limit, and then sometimes they'll do they had a classic throwback watch that came out earlier this year, and then they just sort of said we're discontinuing it, and they'd only run it for like half a year. So it ended up being limited, but they didn't advertise it as limited, and that did increase the hype for it. And we got Cloud Cannon in the live stream saying, forget it. None of the vintage stuff was ever LE. Need the organic collectability.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So he says he was the other vote. So Dave, do you have a set it or forget it for us?
Oh, I certainly do. I certainly do.
Welcome, Obese, to the live stream. We got a little group. I guess people are tired of eating pumpkin pie.
Are we gonna go?
No one eats pumpkin pie for Christmas. I made that up.
I love pie.
Pecan pie. I had pecan pie.
Oh, it's very fancy. Yeah, I'm going to go with, this is an easy one. This is a layup. This is a taster before the main course here. Cyclops lenses. Are we gonna set it or are we gonna forget it?
Man, I gotta think up a new one.
I am gonna forget it because it is freaking terrible. But granted, I am sub 40. So when I get up into those 50-ish years range, maybe that is going to be the greatest thing ever. But at this point, the way that magnify pops up, but it takes up too much of the watch face. It's terrible. Just terrible.
And Tony, you don't need to think up a separate one. If you both ended up having the same one,
that's not actually the one I had, but it's what I thought about.
It was very much we did. Obviously, we didn't share these. Well, they knew mine, but they didn't. They didn't pre-communicate, so they didn't. They knew on all the other. Or they actually don't know on anything else. Actually, as I think about it. All right. So Tony, you've kind of spoiled it. I feel, or at least I know
anybody who's seen me on anything on any of these tots know my feelings on Cyclops dates. I hate them. I absolutely hate them. You either don't need the date or go with a big date. You don't need the Cyclops ruining a perfectly good looking watch. So no, I would forget it for sure.
Okay. And I will call out in the chat. We've had Jason says, forget it on the Cyclops. He's with you both. Doesn't like them. Yeah. Nicholas is okay with the Cyclops, but it only Cyclops the date. Don't Cyclops any other aspects, like maybe the day, for example. Yeah. And also he only wants it at the 3 o'clock position. So he's not a fan of Tag Heuer putting him down at the 6 on some of their watches. And I see Scott has also noted it's not a look he prefers. And he
Scott
agrees with you, David. I'm going to go ahead and vote for Get It on this as well. When I got my Explorer 2 years and years ago, I did not realize, I didn't know anything about watches, and I did not realize the Cyclops was a thing. And I thought that's pretty ugly. I actually read about people soaking Rolex watch crystals in acetone to remove those because it can undo because they're actually glued on. It's not carved on, it's not carving in the magnified. It's a separate piece that gets added to the sapphire. Which of course I never did that. It grew on me in terms of I don't look at it and go the same way anymore. However, it's so iconic to so many of the Rolexes now. When I see a Cyclops on any other watch, I immediately assume you're just copying Rolex, which pisses me off in that kind of trashy homage way. So overall, though, when if I think about a new Rolex, what do I think about if I were to get a Rolex at this point? It'd be a no date sub and avoid that problem entirely. So I don't love the Cyclops. I agree with what Jason had said in the chat about large dates. That's part of the reason why I like this Glashütte Original. Big date complications solve the problem of having too small of a date. I'm not so far gone on my eyesight that I don't I have a real problem with a small date anyway. But if you want a big date, do 2 discs and do a serious big date and, have some fun making good use of that dial space. Cause there's a lot of empty dial real estate. It's only the movement technology that holds people back from, I think, doing big dates. And we typically only see them out of the Germans, but so that would be my vote. I do see we've got a couple other comments coming in. Cloud has said, Eileen said it, but I need a middle option. Well, there's no middle options here, Cloud. Yes. We only do hard choices on ToT, on the preamble to ToT. This is the pregame. And Tuna says, my eyes are crap. I need all the help I can get. And that's something I do see a lot of people mention. Biggest Cyclops fans are people that struggle with near vision in particular. And it just helps a lot. So I do sympathize because you don't want to watch, you can't read.
No, absolutely. Especially if you're a big executive somewhere in a boardroom signing paperwork all the time, and you're checking.
What time? What's the date?
Oh my God! Is it?
That's my biggest problem with getting. I've gone more and more no date because I like the symmetry of the no date watches. But you know what? I actually glance at the date an awful lot if I'm signing stuff, and you'd think I just remember for the day. But today I still had the Flieger on when I had to go to the bank. I was like, remember it's the 27th. Remember it's the 27th because I didn't want to pull out my phone and look like an idiot in the bank. And I still pulled out the phone. Not to check the date, but I still ended up pulling it out. So I still looked like I didn't.
As soon as you walked through that door, they knew you were an idiot.
They were like, why is he coming in? Why didn't he do the drive-through like a normal person? It's because I want a new check register.
Like an American. Drive through everything like an American.
Yes. All right. So ending the poll, we had set it actually, keeping them 57% of the vote. All right, Tony.
There's some stealth supporters.
Do you have something? In there. We do. They're quiet. They're keeping their mouths shut in the chat.
They read the room and they decided to be the silent majority.
They opposed the room, but they did read it ahead of time, and that's all we can ask.
Perfect.
Dive watches with insanely stupid depths. Yeah. The ultra deep dive, the stuff where somebody would have to be in a hard. Nobody is strapping their Rolex ultra deep to the outside of their hard suit as they descend in the Marianas Trench. That's not what happens.
Nobody's wearing their Rolex Submariner when they're going swimming in their backyard. Let's put it that way.
True. But I mean, it's just at this point, it's just a competition to say, "Oh, look what we have." It's like when you start seeing really insane complications, where it's just like we did it just because we could.
Yeah.
But I have what I have been told is a bad case of the functionals when it comes to stuff. And that's just dumb to me.
What do you mean by what's your definition of ultra depth?
Anything. I mean, some of these ones that have been coming out lately, I'd have to look it up, but their depths are like below your ability to scuba dive.
Yes. So I'm just wondering, is that your threshold? Is your threshold like 1,000 meters of depth? Like what? I just want to, for the audience, for them to know what you mean by
anything below what you can scuba dive at. Let's go with that.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's scuba. Yeah, I don't think anybody's scuba diving in their Rolexes or anything like that. But when you start talking like 1,000 meters and just insanity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even like a 600 meters with the Omega Super, not the Super Ocean, but the
Planet Oceans.
Planet Ocean. I'm like, that's a pretty thick, hefty watch to be just walking around in. That's a pretty big statement kind of watch. At 600. But at 600 meters, you're like, okay, well, that's pretty impressive, actually. And then Rolex now with their Ultra Deep has just sort of been like, well, you know what? I'm going to be number one. It's just
so that's interesting. So, and I
don't
know who.
I'm going.
So, just because I looked it up real quick, with very specialized equipment, you can get down to 500 feet, but it requires a ton of support and specialized equipment and special gas mixes and all sorts of stuff. Mm-hmm. But that is too deep for anything beyond like extremely technical stuff.
Right, like uber specific saturation diving. Okay, Odis Tuna noted 1,000 meters would kill you, so I could see like adopting that 1,000 meter threshold, like Tony. And I just wanted folks who are voting, because obviously there are a lot of people that want some sort of depth level. Jason noted he could barely get to 5 meters living in Aruba. Because one of the things, of course, that gets complicated with watches is we have this water resistance, but it's not the true depth that the watch itself can go. So like most Rolexes that aren't the dive Rolexes are 100 meters, which is seen as swim grade, but you're not supposed to take them 100 meters down because it has to do with like when you're moving your arm, it can take 100 meters of pressure. And obviously if you make any movement at 100 meters, you've now put more pressure on it than 100. It's sort of the argument. So, I mean, I'm just going to say, I agree with you, Tony. At 1,000+ meter dive watch stuff, I don't get it. I don't get it. I think it's the weirdest flex. And we saw it happen twice this year where Omega set the depth record and then Rolex came and set the depth record. But they're strapping the watches on the side of a submarine. But the submarine doesn't read the watch because the submarine doesn't care. So I don't. It's weird to me. It's a weird thing.
There's no window in the submarine to look out at the watch attached to the submarine.
And but I do think brand headlights here does have a point. Like if it didn't affect the size into like stupid sizing, which like the Rolex is what it's like a 60 millimeter lug to lug, and it's like 20+ millimeters thick. Like
and the thickness of the bezel around the outside, it like has ultra deep Rolex written on it, and then it has that like it looks terrible too. They didn't even do a good job of that.
But I am a forget it. Dave, what's your
forget it.
Okay. So we're all in agreement, Tony. We all like your stance on that. And in terms of the online polling, you had the largest majority win at 75%. Forget it.
This guy.
There's still some stealth people that are like, oh, I want that depth. I want the ultra deep.
Stupid ultra deep depth. I like you got that in there.
So that was set it or forget it. So that was a poached pinball game. I got another poached pinball game. They're better prepped for this one. And this is a token, a staple, historic staple that they have brought back on the Slam Tilt podcast, which is game you like, game you hate. But obviously for watches, we're changing it to watch you like, watch you hate. So super simple. We have all chosen a watch. They've all told me ahead of time. I'm going to throw up some graphics here. They're going to have I'm going to have the labels, picture of the watch, and the name of the person. Because I'll make a poll so people can pick like which one is their favorite of the ones we like, and which one is the properly most hated one of the ones we hate. The only condition I set for anyone here is you could not pick a watch, love it or hate it, that you have ever owned. So that way we're doing hard takes, so we have no grounds to make any statements on. We're going all in. Gotta go all in. So let me get the screen share up here. So folks should be able to now see it. This is so watches you like. Dave chose the No Time to Die edition, Seamaster 007. That's the titanium watch. And then Tony's option one is in the middle. That's the bronze Oris Big Crown, pointer date, green dial variant. And then I picked a release from this year, the Longines 190th anniversary, kind of a 40 millimeter steel throwback Breguet style looking watch. So Dave, do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about your pick and why you like it so much? Thank you. I will type the poll while you.
I love the Omega Seamaster. It's got the reference number 210-90-4220-01001. This speaks to me. Okay, first of all, I love James Bond, a big James Bond fan. But if we pull all of that out, if we take away all the James Bond, all the movie stuff, and we just go with the watch itself, it is absolutely a stunner. Take a look at that in that image right there. Right? Some of the coolest bits about this watch, the Super Luminova on the outside of the bezel. So usually the outside crown, rotating bezel, bidirectional bezel, it doesn't light up. Only the pip at the top at the 12 o'clock does. But all of the numbers and points on the outside of that bezel light up. And I think it's green. It's absolutely just stunning. Absolutely stunning. The Milanese bracelet out of titanium has this amazing clasp. I wore one at a dealer. Oh my God. It's the titanium is just the right weight. It's thinner than the other Seamaster divers. It's a little bit thinner because of that dome sapphire crystal. But what I love the most is that it is very understated. This is an understated watch. It's not shiny, it's not really blingy, it doesn't have a whole lot of like oranges or blues or whites. It's just this sort of black, matte black looking. It is gorgeous. Got the 8806 coaxial master chronometer certified. It is just beautiful. So, and then you add on to that, Daniel Craig worked on it with them to come up with a design that the character of James Bond would do. It comes with a cool James Bond case, the little roller case. It's got, you're able to get the additional NATO strap on it. It's just awesome. It's a beautiful watch. But in Canada, it's $11,500. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think you've already, because it's the one you picked, though I do see Scott did ask a question. Jason did note that is his favorite one of these three, but Scott asked about, they did just release a new James Bond 60th anniversary, the blue with the blue dial, kind of the throwback to the Pierce Brosnan era. But I assume you do prefer this titanium watch to that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The titanium 8806, no date, right? There's no date on it. It's a tool watch. It's made to be military. Right, it's made to be like if you're busting through a missile silo, hunting for your daughter and your wife, your girlfriend who betrayed you earlier in the day, right? You're working, you got somebody else took your 007 name. That's what you got right there. You're not checking your date. You don't want any light reflecting off of that thing and off the dial or off the stainless steel. But yet you still want to wear a nice suit, tie, go for a pint. That's your watch.
Well, you've sold it pretty hard. I will note,
Yeah.
Though Tony may have already seen it, that unfortunately, Tony, and hey, he has not even seen your watch you hate yet, because that one.
Oh, don't worry, I know how that one's going to go.
Seal the deal for most of these people. But Tony, first, you picked one I was very surprised about. Actually,
I love this watch,
really?
Tony. You picked a great watch. I love this watch.
I first came across these Oris Big Crowns on Reddit. Somebody posted their all bronze Oris Big Crown on Reddit, and I instantly fell in love with that watch. And then I went and looked into it. He had the burgundy dial. I prefer the green dial myself to the burgundy dial.
Agreed.
But I like bronze watches, period. But of all the bronze watches I've seen, this is the one that reaches out to me the most. I just love the pointer date is something that I've not really seen anywhere else. And it's just such an interesting way to do the date compared to the normal way dates are done. I really like it. I think it really stands up. And having the fact that on this one, it's all bronze, even the bracelet's bronze, everything's bronze on it, which means you're going to get that good patina over time. And I just fell instantly in love with this watch. It helps that it's not too stupidly expensive in the US. It's $2,600. But it just is one of those things. Every once in a while, you see something and it just kind of reaches out and grabs your soul. And that's what this watch did to me when I saw it. It is just, it's so beautiful and classic, and it's got the interesting complication with the pointer date, but it still seems just so simple that it being on your wrist for a fancy dress or just a normal day seems like something that would be no big deal. It seems very much
strap too.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like something you could do about anything with. And I just thought it looked great.
Leather strap. Oh.
And I will note, Obese Tuna in the live chat has noted that bronze is polarizing, either a love it or hate it kind of metal, which is quite true. It kind of had a fad a few years ago, but we have seen bronze continue on with a number of companies, some who still rely on it quite a bit. So interesting. These were both very interesting choices. I guess just in terms of mine, I actually did a video on I mentioned this on a live stream recently. I talked about 11 of my favorite reveals of 2022. I did not catch this when it originally came out. I believe they have limited gold versions, but this is the steel version. Longines 190th anniversary. What I like about it is it offers a very, very minimalist, classic looking dress watch design. It's actually a sizable watch. I believe it's 40 millimeters in diameter, so it's not small. But you've got these really, I think, well-carved, elegant Breguet style numerals, blued hands on a silver dial. That's it. It's cheaper than either of your two watches as well. It's a couple $100 less than the Oris. So it's also, it's still a luxury watch, but on the realm of things, it's pretty affordable. I think it's $2,400 for this version in steel. Comes on a leather strap. And so it's just sort of like, if you're looking for luxury dress watches, I feel people often struggle with it's sort of like people go, let's talk Orient Bambino on the really, really low end. And then there's kind of we don't know what we want to do until you start moving into five figures or something. And it's well, no, Longines is definitely a company to look at. This is only a little bit more retail than a Tudor 1926 would be. And I think it looks better as a dial configuration. So I like its simplicity.
Beautiful.
And I love Breguet numerals. They made their name on pocket watches, so there's a really nice classic throwback. No date, much like with the Omega No Time to Die. There's no date to muck up the symmetry of the dial. Of course, Tony avoided that by having a pointer date, so his symmetry is also preserved. So I like all these watches. So
I wouldn't say no to any of these watches. These watches are all very nice.
Okay, well, I will now close the poll to see what the victor, who is the victor, and the victor is David. No Time to Die with over half the vote.
It was the money, right? Because everybody's I want a $12,000 watch.
Well, you did have the most expensive one, so that may have given you a leg up. But you never know on these things. Tony, you were second at 27% of the vote. So
I'll be last now.
Well, you might be. I don't know.
Let's find out.
Okay. All right. So now we're gonna do Watch You Hate. Well, let me see what Scott said here real quick. I think Longines is underrated. They have a nice catalog with reasonable pricing and discounts available from 80s. Yeah, I've never owned a Longines. I always forget about them. Whenever they come in my mind, I mentioned this on another stream I did by myself. I always think of Tissot, but they're not in the same price tier.
No.
So when you look and you start comparing, you're like, well, all the Tissots are more affordable. And then I just end up looking at Tissot. So we're going to do watches we hate now. And okay, so there are some interesting choices here. All right. So David chose the Tag Heuer Formula One cross collaboration with Red Bull Racing. Tony chose Rolex GMT Master 2, specifically the Pepsi dial configuration. And I chose the recently revealed Mosier Endeavor Center Seconds Genesis NFT watch. So I will start typing this up, but David, I will let you kick us off yet again.
Okay, so everything that I loved about the No Time to Die Omega, this is the exact opposite of that. This watch is specifically designed for a person that has no idea about watches. They have not a clue. They're the kind of person where marketing works beyond working. Like, not that No Time to Die doesn't have marketing behind it, because it certainly does. But this is the kind of marketing for like dumb people. Okay? You got Red Bull Racing, who are a great F1 racing team. Amazing team. They stole a championship a couple of years ago, and this year they sort of dominated the sport, but regardless, this is a quartz watch, and it is like $3,000. Why are you buying a quartz watch for $3,000? It's because you don't know about watches. That's why. It's got a terrible placement of the date. The color scheme is ugly. The chronograph here. The chronograph says speed on it, Dennis. It says speed. It's just ridiculous. Everything about this watch just makes me angry.
Gotta get fast, man.
Because what it is it's somebody who's like, I like Red Bull. They're sponsored by Tag Heuer, and I want an F1 watch. It's ridiculous.
I don't think
the same kind of person that would buy this watch that would buy an NFT watch.
Okay. That's interesting. I will note as we go along, Tuna did say from the prior thing the Conquest was quite nice. Scott loves all our choices, thinks they're all hideous. Von Cruel notes that Mosier does like to make troll watches, and I will touch on that. And Cloud asked me, is that a real watch, or did you Photoshop a QR code to a strap? It is real. Unfortunately, the quality kind of decayed as I resized it, which sometimes happens. But I'll get into that as well. And Brand Headlights notes, the Mosier looks cool and unique, but it's a bit overpriced. Yeah, so.
Oh my God, it does.
Oh, it'd be great if it rickrolled you.
Yes, and I will touch on this because as Nicholas notes, Mosier and the trolling. Yeah, no, that's it's real.
That's you scan the QR code and that's what you get.
It takes you to a site. So, Tony, though, we got to go. Look, I gotta shift the rage. Okay, Tony, you have not. I mean, this. It doesn't say speed on the dial, so I'm curious. I want to hear why you dislike. Not only the Rolex GMT Master 2, one of the 3 best-selling Rolex in-demand watches with the Daytona and the Submariner up there with it, but also the most popular bezel configuration, the Pepsi.
He's a Coke guy.
Well, that's the obvious original answer. But no, the reality is that I actually don't. The Rolex GMT Master 2 is not my least favorite Rolex by a long shot. I'm actually pretty okay with it overall. Specifically, though, the Pepsi dial configuration has always just kind of annoyed me. I don't actually like the blue-red combination. I don't like how it looks on the watch itself. And I 100% do not understand how this is the most popular configuration of this watch. And I do understand I am not Rolex's target audience because I find most of their watches absolutely hideous. They've got like 2 watches that I like. But why would anybody with the other options in the GMT Master 2 take the red and blue? I don't understand. If you're going with the GMT Master 2, this seems like the just absolute wrong option. I just don't like how it looks, but it's super popular, and it is so popular that it has become almost meme-ish, and it overtakes it to the point where I've seen discussions online where people are asking other people why they didn't get the Pepsi dial for their GMT Master 2. And I've literally seen the argument, well, I already have a Pepsi dial GMT Master 2. And it's just, I don't understand it. It's like I saw a guy's state of the collection the other day, and he had 4 Daytonas and 2 GMTs in it. And it makes no sense to me. You need to have some difference in your stuff. I just think that
somebody with no personality, and that's what people tell them they need.
Right, and that's part of it. Like I said, if I was going to choose a GMT Master 2, which is entirely possible, they're not my least favorite Rolex, but it would not be in this color configuration.
I could choose one. They're not my least favorite. It still doesn't really say the GMT Master 2, even in a different color configuration, really is rising into the top of your.
No, they're not. They're not what I'm going to take. I don't mind. They've got the one in that. Oh, what do they call it? The Ever Rose Gold combo, black and Ever Rose Gold. It's okay.
We don't bring up rose gold on this.
I know. That's partially why it had to come up. But the black and green is okay-ish. But for the most part, I just hate the 2-tone bezel, period, pretty much on the GMTs.
We'll see what the poll thinks. I think this is one of Rolex's more attractive watches. So okay. So in terms of the Moser now, all right, guys, I'm monitoring the chat. Obviously I've seen it. I get it. Moser likes to troll. Moser made a watch out of cheese to make fun of how not Swiss made so many watches that say Swiss made are. They're all in about doing things 100%. This does not forgive the fact that this watch is easily the ugliest thing on this screen right now. I'm sorry, Tag. I'm sorry, Tag. I get it. It says, what time it says speed. It's got one weird loom pip by the 4:30 date for no discernible reason. There's a lot to dislike about that Red Bull watch. I got to say, Tony's just wrong. The GMT Master 2 Pepsi is an excellent watch, but this is ugly. I mean, all right, get past the QR code. Get past the troll part. Okay, look at this bezel. It's rough. It's rough. It looks 3D printed. It looks cheap. And it's just like a $26,000 watch, guys. So on paper, on retail, this is the most expensive watch of the 3 on the list. And it's hard to read. It's ugly. And while I can sympathize that they probably looked at like Tag's NFT watch and looked at that Roboto watch that recently came out that had a whole bunch of to the moon crypto crap carved all over it. And they were like, we're going to make fun of this, but it's a bit late, right? Like crypto's collapsed. People are skeptical of everything involving crypto and NFTs right now. They're a bit late to the party to make fun of it. It would have been more meaningful if they were taking a jab before FTX imploded and everyone's like, yeah, crypto's a scam. They're a bit late to the party. So I get it. I do believe it's troll. The website has all the stuff where you take the picture of it and it'll take you to the page, and each one of these will have its own unique authentication. You'll be able to photograph and know it is indeed the true. They're going to use the NFT technology. Actually, for what NFT is supposed to be used for, actual, authentication is a legitimate angle that NFT could go down. instead of being like collectible computer generated monkeys, which makes like, I don't know, because they're ugly. I didn't understand it. Right. But at this price point, it's not worth the troll. It's just not funny. It's just ugly. So I don't like
anybody who would buy that watch is
I don't like it.
money in crypto.
I don't like it. So a few other things before I close the poll out. See, Nicholas had noted he wishes Rolex would just give brushed center links on the sports models. Not that you can get one of those models anyway. And I didn't ask Tony. I went ahead and just picked the Oyster bracelet. This watch does come on the Jubilee as well, so you could get it with the Jubilee bracelet.
Do you prefer the Jubilee on this though, Tony? If it was Jubilee, you think that you'd be?
No, that wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, it sounded like his complaint was mostly about. I see Scotty is definitely doubling down on the Tony's choices are not the right choices with the shallow notation. And Von Krull says their Swiss Icons watch is a complete abomination. They got a lot of hate for that one. And Obese Tuna has acknowledged that the Moser is making him ill. So I will take it off the screen so that folks don't need to see it. I'm going to go ahead and end our poll, and I overwhelmingly won with that ugly Moser with 69% of the vote. The tag came in second at 30%. And Tony, you should have gone and voted for yourself because that GMT got zero votes for the Rolex. So you are wrong, sir.
How could I? Did you see that Moser?
That's fair. If only David and I hadn't picked such terrible watches, you'd have had a chance. You're saying there's a chance. Okay.
Red Bull, what have you done?
Yes, poor Red Bull. All right, so now we will go ahead and yes, thank you very much. Yes, I was proud of that one because I was like, oh, I gotta pick something really bad if I'm gonna, because I was worried about David's stand because he sent it to me and I was like, oh, this one's really rough. I mean, who wants to pay like $3,000 for that? I mean, if it was a fancy quartz movement, maybe, but not the way it looked. All right. So we're going to get into the actual game, this or that. So those of you who are new to the live stream, welcome. Very, very simple. I'm going to put up a series. We got 5 of them. Put up a series of head-to-head comparisons of a couple of watches, and we'll each decide, discuss like which one do we like more, and also again be doing live polls for those watching live, so that you'll be able to vote and pick like which of the two would you prefer. I have done one change up versus last time. I'm not throwing cash into the equation anymore. Some of these watches are just going to be significantly. I try to keep them within reason, depending on the price of the watch. But because sometimes it's like, oh, I hate both, so I'd rather have $200 to go out to Blockbuster, even though they're closed. So I'm removing that factor, and so they won't. You'll notice there's just going to be watch versus watch. I'm not throwing cash on top, at least on any of these 5 that we've gone with. So let us start with the first one. Now this one's interesting. This was requested. To actually do an actual head-to-head of the same watch, just different colorway. So that's what this is. These are both Omega Diver 300Ms. One is the green dial version on the right of the screen. One is the classic blue dial version on the left. They use the same movement. They're the same size at 42 millimeters. They're both $5,400 retail. They both are 300 meters of water resistance. So, I guess I'll go ahead and kick us off on this one. And I'll put some links in the chat once I'm done talking, so people can actually click and load up the watches. But I'd pick the blue one. I would say I do actually like this green watch quite a bit. I think Omega does a pretty good green dial, and it seems to have caught on quite a bit lately in terms of it's. I've seen more and more people actually talk about the green version, but it's nostalgia is the issue with the blue. It reminds me a lot of the Pierce Brosnan watch. Obviously, it's not the same as the Bond 60th anniversary throwback, but I like it with the pop of red on the seconds hand and the little red Seamaster. So it's got a little more visual interest to me. And otherwise, they're the same watch. So it is what it is. But anyway, that's my pick. Dave, what do you think?
I'm glad you went with the green one here in the comparison because of the Omegas, the green is probably my least favorite of the colors. The black, gorgeous. The white's the one for me. Gray, absolutely beautiful. The blue, stunning. Between the two, I got to go blue for all the exact same reasons as you, Dennis. A little more interesting, a little more classic. But I'm a sucker for blue dials. I really am. I got a couple of blue dial my diver that I have is a blue dial watch. My daily driver Hamilton is blue dial watch. I just don't like the green.
And normally I actually prefer green to blue in most watch container. And it's not just because 2021 was a green fad. I've always preferred green. I think it goes with more stuff too than blue. But and I will note, and this is a good point, which obviously the render does not capture, but I have seen a number of these on the wrist in photographs. And yeah, if it doesn't have a lot of light on it, that green can look black. So it does not pop in the same way in all light conditions. So just FYI. Of course, the blue looks different too. Tony, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to agree. The blue is superior, and I'm a big fan of green dials. I just specifically don't really like this one for all the same reasons that have been listed already. The red color pops, and blues just feels like the classic look. I would definitely go with the blue.
Okay, so we're all unanimous about the blue. See, the live chat has a few comments here. Tuna has said that he agrees that it's a much nicer watch in the blue. And Cloudkin has also noted the green will always make you want the Hulk, which is the green Rolex Submariner. And Rolex will never make a stainless steel blue watch. So Omega is the actual keeper here. So, okay, let me see where our folks are at when I end the poll. I got to navigate between two windows to do that. So the results are the blue wins with 87% of the vote, but there was some support for green.
Yeah. Okay. Good for you. You're wrong, but good for you.
Yeah. That was pretty, I thought that was pretty easy to do because obviously
that was simple.
They were the same watch. So they're the same watch, so just a couple of different colors. So let me go ahead and screen share our ToT number 2. A little hard to read. Nice. This is kind of my eco-friendly price point one. So we've got Citizen's Mandalorian watch versus Swatch's Dragon Ball Z Shenron collaboration watch. So the Citizen is, at least in this price point, significantly more money. It's about $100 more than the Swatch is. The Citizen is 44 millimeters. It comes on this kind of cloth bund strap. I believe it's a silicone strap on the Shenron, but it's a big watch. The Shenron's 47 millimeters in diameter. Water resistance is very different, of course. The Citizen has 200 meters of water resistance, whereas the Swatch only has 30. I could not figure out what the Swatch's movement is. Is it some sort of basic cheap quartz movement?
The Swatch movement.
Yeah, probably the same one that not the same one they'd use in the Moon Swatch, because obviously that had a chronograph function. But probably something along those lines of quality. Citizen uses what they call their J180. It's an eco drive watch, so it's a rechargeable through the sun, which of course they're very, very fond of. So, I mean, you can see most of the stuff. These are just sort of fun watches. So I will let you go first, Dave, as I drop some links in the chat so people can load them up.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for pretty much anything Mando. Like, come on. When it comes down to this type of choice, I also really like. I had seen this elsewhere, and I really like the strap, the burlap-esque strap that it has. It's pretty cool. I really like that. I'm going with the Citizen Mandalorian.
Well, I'm going to agree, and I'm a pretty big fan of Mando, and I'm a really big fan of Dragon Ball as well. But of these watches specifically, I'm going to go with the Mando one. I like the bund style strap. I'm actually shopping for a bund strap for my hack, but I just overall like the look of this one better than of the Shenron. Now, if you'd gone with one of the other options, like the Roshi or the Frieza, might have had it gone the other way. That purple on the Frieza is just
so nerdy. Oh my god, so nerdy.
Oh yeah, but for this specific case, with this, I'm going with the Mando.
Okay, so 2 for Mando. I do see Tuna in the chat has said he just cannot bring himself to like either of these watches, and that's kind of my boat. I struggle with. I mean, okay, so I actually like the aesthetic of the Shenron watch, except it's way too big like at 47 millimeters, I don't know. I think I would look like a child wearing it. And that might be okay given what it is. I'm not the biggest Dragon Ball fan, but I know what it's referencing. But I don't know this one. Yeah, I would agree. Like I would probably prefer like the Goku watch or one of the smaller ones that they got versus this one. I do like Mandalorian, but I don't like bun straps. So I don't like the strap that this comes on because I don't like the look of bun straps. Plus, it's already a big watch. And buns just seem to make things look even bigger. So I don't know why a 44 millimeter watch needs a bun strap, especially one that's not leather. It's a weird choice. I assume to save money. I actually like the dial configuration sorta on the Mandalorian, except I don't like the font choice they did with these numbers. Like they're real blocky, almost like they were using tritium tubes, but they're not using tritium tubes.
Some of the balls look like those.
And the date looks wrong with how they've got it configured. They didn't take the 3 out. They just shoved it in real close to the center of the dial. So I'm not a big fan of that, though I like the layout overall of it. But I will go ahead and I will vote for the Citizen in this instance, but I don't love either of them. So anyway, so those are my picks.
Welcome to Watches with Dennis, where all we do is compromise.
That's right. That's what I ended up doing. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll, and it's 50-50.
Oh, that's how bad they were. Yeah.
Yeah. That one was rough.
I am a clown. I must amuse someone, or at least my choices. I'd extra look like a clown if I wore that Shenron watch on my tiny little wrist. I will say that. So, okay, let me bounce us along here. We're moving at a good clip. There's much less drama now that we're not going through and listening to, like why is the GMT Master 2 a bad watch or anything. So I'm just playing. So, okay, so let's go to number 3. So this matchup, had to throw Rolex in. I'm sure I know how Tony's going to feel about it. Rolex Sky Dweller is this is the 326938. This is a gold watch, $46,750, 42 millimeter diameter watch, 100 meters of water resistance, with their classic not really classic, fairly modern 9001 movement. And then I've got that up against another kind of hype watch, the AP Royal Oak Offshore. This is one of their chronograph configurations, however. It's actually a little bit cheaper watch, but it's not in precious metals. It's steel. 42 millimeters in diameter, 100 meters of water resistance, and it uses the 4404 movement. A little bit less power reserve, but it's also a 4 hertz movement, and obviously includes chronograph function. So let's see. Tony, I'll have you lead off because Dave did it last time.
All right. This is interesting to me. They are,
and I'll put links in the chat for folks.
Honestly, they're not either one of them horrible in my mind. The Royal Oaks are, I know they've been very popular, and I don't absolutely hate them. I think they're pretty good looking overall, but in this one specific case, I'm going to go with the Sky Dweller. Actually, it is just, it feels a little less busy than the Royal Oak Offshore does. Even though both of these have things I hate on them.
Tell me what you think, Tony. Tell me what you think.
Oh no! I don't hide my dislike at all. But honestly, the Cyclops, which is annoying enough on the Sky Dweller, with the little round ring thing on the date on the Royal Oak, that if anything annoys me even more than the Sky Dweller being with its all gold and the weird random red bark at the 8 o'clock. And yeah, it's just, I'm not a fan of either, but I'll go with the Sky Dweller.
Okay, that was the most lackluster endorsement I've ever heard. But hey,
sorry,
not every. No, it's fine. It's fine. That's the point. That's the point of it. Not all choices are going to be easy or fun. Some will just be painful. But that's the life of a hobby. So, I don't know. I struggled with this one as well because obviously, with the AP being in steel, it feels like you're almost getting somewhat ripped off. At this price point of them, like for $1,000 more, you get this solid gold cased watch versus what's going on with the AP. But the AP does have a complication. So does the Sky Dweller, though. I think it's probably arguable that the Sky Dweller might be one of Rolex's most complicated, if not the most complicated watch that they have. I don't like the Cyclops with the 3 o'clock date with that center wheel on the Sky Dweller. I just aesthetically, I just don't prefer it. So I'll actually say I like the AP more. A little busy, but it is a 42 millimeter watch. I don't think it'd be too hard to read the tachometer and chronograph function. I don't love its 3 o'clock date either, but I don't know. It's just a little bit cleaner for me overall. So I will go ahead and say the Royal Oak offshore would be my personal pick. But yeah, I could definitely see it going either way because I feel like it's that. I mean, 45,000 is a lot of money for a steel watch. And this is retail price. This isn't like what they're trading for secondhand, which I'm assuming, granted, I could be wrong. I'm assuming it's more though, because Royal Oaks are still kind of like, the hotness sort of thing, but they make so many of them. AP does. I just don't know anymore. Dave, Tony and I are split. What do you think?
Wow. Not only were you split, you gave that like one heck of a sales pitch, I have to say. Oh, thank you very much.
Oh, someone gets vodka.
Straight vodka, just like
that. That's how the Canadians like it.
Oh, it's dry in here. It's so dry. I'm so parched.
We call that Russian syrup.
You made a lot of really great points on there. $45,000 is a lot of money for a steel watch. But regardless, I think the value of an AP does go up significantly compared to a Rolex. That Sky Dweller, I don't know how anybody buys that specific model, especially 32693A. The gold is straight at a like cocaine Wall Street 80s. Just terrible. So I'm going with the AP. On looks alone, and I feel like it's going to go up in value a little more. Complications aside, it's just they're both okay.
And going back to the chat to mine,
they're both very meh.
Yeah. To mine it for some feedback. Let's see. Tuna says both are extremely expensive icons, but the Sky Dweller has a certain something. I'd say that certain something is probably gold, but it might be the complication.
Gold.
Scott says that the Audemars Piguet dial is much more interesting to him. And Cloudkin says that the offshores are dropping and he'd rather get he'd rather get the 15,500 and stick with Rolex in a recession, which is a sound argument. I mean, that's the one nice thing about Rolex watches is, except for maybe a Cellini, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a value that it will at least hold, if not improve. And I don't think a lot of people are overly worried about that changing, even with the recessionary patterns that we're seeing come into play. So that's one of the strengths about Rolex is if you're unsure and you think you're going to get out of a watch eventually, like it's the brand. Like if you're unsure and you can get one, because it's sort of a nothing other than a few hype pieces like 5711 or something. But pretty much the whole catalog is solid in terms of value retention.
You could probably trade that Sky Dweller for a lot of cocaine.
Even day dates tend to hold their value.
So let me go ahead and kill that poll off right quick. And it's another split decision, 50-50 for both. Okay.
Man.
I'm sorry, perpetual day dates.
Yes, perpetuals. Well, actually, I don't. I have something. I don't think I have a full-on perpetual in our matchups today. Though I will note. Oh, I see. Brand Headlight says if Sky Dweller was in steel, he would go for it instead of the Royal Oak. That probably would have been enough to push me over, but in part that would be because at retail price, then the Sky Dweller would have been significantly less than that AP instead of being within a couple thousand.
That retails for 55,000 Canadian. That is it's
crazy. It's crazy. But that's how watches are sometimes.
Oh.
So let's talk about marine watches. I don't know if we've ever done marine watches here, at least not a head-to-head. So I'm going to give you a couple.
Here we go.
I'm not really familiar with these, so I thought let's go off the beaten path a little bit. So I have the Ulysse Nardin Marine Torpille. Forgive I'm assuming that's French, but I didn't say it right. So it's a moon phase watch. We'll say that it's a UN moon phase, and then that's going up against Breguet's Marine watch. They got like 17 variants of their basic Breguet Marine. This is the 5517 Ti Y1 TZ0, of course. There is a few $1,000 difference here between the two. So the UN's about $22,500, whereas the Breguet is just under 20,000. The watches are different water resistances. Marine is kind of like on the deck of a boat style. It's not a dive watch, so it's not unusual for them not to have really robust water resistance levels. But you have 100 out of the Breguet, whereas you only have 50 out of the UN. The UN is a larger watch at 42 millimeters versus 40 out of the Breguet. They're both using their own versions of like in-house movements. The Breguet's got 55 hours of power reserve, whereas the UN has 60. Obviously, the UN has got this moon phase feature going on, and then at the top is that subdial. I believe that is a power reserve indicator that goes from low to full, basically. And then the Breguet is simply a time plus date watch with a center seconds rather than a small seconds. I will put the links in the chat. I guess this time it's my turn to go first. I think for me, I would actually go with the Breguet. I don't know. There again, this is the story of the story of today's watch. Actually, I didn't get the whole. Sorry, I'm multitasking. Didn't get the whole watch name in with my link post. So let me do it again. The story of today's selections is, there's always just something off about all of this stuff that I don't really like. With the Breguet, again, I don't really like how they did this window. Like the angle cut looks weird. I love the sunburst dial though. This looks a lot better than how my picture of it does. The Roman numerals are a little odd to me as well for the approach, but it's a kind of a handy watch, I guess. I normally like small seconds on watches a lot, but it's okay with the moon phase here. I don't know about the power reserve being involved at all. Also, the problem is the UN. I'm going to pick the Breguet when I get the poll posted. Will be in a moment, but my vote would be for the Breguet. And the reason is the UN violates one of my core rules that I haven't been willing to bend on yet, and that is do not crop your numerals. Shrink them, remove them, reposition them, but do not crop them. And I know in the classic tradition they were cropped, so this is just it's personal preference, but do not crop them. And the UN crops them, and so for that reason, I would actually go ahead and go with the Marine. I will say that the Marine is not a steel watch; that is titanium, but the UN is gold, so it's not just gold colored; it is a gold watch. So, but I will pick the Breguet. David.
Yeah, Ulysse Nardin Marine Torpille. Yeah, I think Torpille. I don't know. I'm from a bilingual province, but I feel like I butchered that. I am a huge fan of the UN. That is a beauty. That is a beauty. No comparison to the Breguet. No comparison. Don't mind the cropped Roman numerals, but I'm not a fan of Roman numerals, but I understand it's made to be dressier or fancier. Not a dress watch, but be fancier. And fancy means Roman numerals. And that's a beauty. It's the right size at 42. You're not going to be swimming in it anyway. You're not going to be near water besides it just raining. The moon phase complication on that, the artistry just in that image alone, and I am on the website there and looking at them. No, that's the one for me, absolutely. I wouldn't even look at the Breguet. Wouldn't even look at it.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I've covered half of my screen. I've covered it up.
If I had my paint program, I just erase it all out. There you go. Obese Tuna likes the UN as well, so you're not alone, Dave. But Tony, what do you think?
I am going to shock you deeply and utterly.
You want to go back and choose the Rolex?
Oh, you beat me to.
How'd you know? How'd you know? No, for the actuality of me liking things being very functional and minimal, that UN is just something about it screams class and history. I like the brush dial on the Breguet, but I totally dislike the way they've done their Roman numerals. I dislike the date, and it just seems very modern and normal, where the UN just feels like it has history. It's got weight. It's got class and style behind it. I don't like complications normally. I find like moon phase stuff kind of just funny, and just those add-in things because you can do it. But everything just hits on that UN that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce just right, and it just looks beautiful. I mean, it is just a complete difference looking at these two side by side. It just has so much more presence.
The Torpillier.
When
I look at that, though, it doesn't scream Marine Watch. Like, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't. When I look at it, I'm not like, oh, it's the porthole. It's not the deck of a boat. It's not an old bell that they would ring on. That, like, I don't see any of that there. I just
I don't, and I don't know enough about the history of the, like, what all is enough to trigger it. Like, maybe their thinking is that the sub dials are to mimic that, and otherwise they're going with maybe a style of hand that is often associated with it. I don't know. The Breguet one almost looks like they were trying to work lumen where they could, so they made some choices there. Whereas this one clearly didn't go with that sort of approach and is much more of a dress watch.
They almost went. They went more. I don't know. The fancy people on the Titanic.
Yeah, I was checking the UN site because I was trying to see whether or not the dial was enamel, because I'm wondering if it looks enamel to me, but I didn't see a confirmation of what they made the dial out of, which would fit with why it looks as elegant as it does. But
it looks so nice.
Okay, well,
I can see myself on a ship sinking with that watch on my wrist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trying to bribe somebody to get off first.
Exactly. That's exactly where I can see it.
Okay, and I will go ahead and end the poll, and the listeners and viewers agree with you both. 66% chose the UN Marine over the Breguet.
Nice.
Poor Breguet, this is why your prices continue to suffer on the secondhand market. Granted, the UNs do too, so I shouldn't be.
Oh man, there's one locally here that was trying to be sold by a collector, and it is very expensive, and it is ugly, and it has been there for months.
And BJ has joined us. Hey everyone, welcome BJ to the live stream. We're getting ready to go into the fifth and final ToT matchup.
Ooh.
And yes, very exciting. And Tony will get to lead us off on this one. But all right, so I've gone chronos. I've gone dive-esque chronos, though obviously the Breitling isn't quite deep enough for true diving, but you could swim in it. So there's that. So I've got the Breitling Super Chronomat 44 4-year calendar. This is a almost $18,000 watch, 44 millimeters in diameter, 100 meters of water resistance, 42-hour power reserve, 4 hertz movement, chronograph functionality, versus Blancpain's 50 fathoms Bath Escape chronograph flyback. So I did not see that the Breitling was a flyback. Flyback is, if I'm remembering correctly, because I don't believe I've ever owned one, is you can actually reset the chronograph without pausing it. You can hit the bottom button and it will just reset. So it's harder to do. So anyway, flyback. They're becoming more popular lately. It's about $17,000, so a little bit cheaper. Diameter is a little bit smaller, 43.6 millimeters, 300 meters of water resistance. And this is actually a 5 hertz movement. So it can chrono to 1/10 of a second. So I will note that. But it also has a little bit more robust power reserve. Obviously, it comes on a sort of strap, whereas the Breitling is a mix of steel and gold. That two-tone, the second tone is actual gold metal, so they did incorporate gold into it. Whereas the Blancpain, the case is ceramic. It's made out of ceramic, not metal. So Tony, I will start getting links in the chat and the pull up, but what do you think?
All right. I'm going to go with the Breitling because while it does have even more complications, it looks like it has a moon phase too. The simple difference in coloration, because that black on black on black on black on black on the Blancpain doesn't really do anything for me. And the giant baton hands, I'm not a huge fan of the giant baton hands on the Blancpain either. So for me, the Breitling is the one I would take personally. I don't mind the two-tone with the gold as it's done here on the Breitling. It's much more subtle than you see some two-tones in a lot of other things, and that I'm okay with that. But overall, between the coloration, my preference for the hands and everything, I'm going to go with the Breitling.
Okay. And yes, it is more complicated. Beyond just being a chronograph, what the 4-year calendar means is this is not a perpetual calendar watch, but if you were to keep it wound, you only need to reset it every 4 years because of leap year. It will be accurate beyond that though. So it actually can keep track of the 28-day February and all of that. So yes, it is got a fairly complicated calendar function incorporated with it beyond just offering you a chronograph function. So Dave, or no, I guess it would be my turn. And by Obese, thanks for stopping in the live stream. I will choose the Blancpain. I will choose the Blancpain. Part of it is the busyness of the Breitling dial, which if it was like the slide rule busyness, I'd be kind of cool with it, Navitimer style. But I'm not behind this with all this stuff going on with all of it. I'm a big fan of chronographs having 5 hertz movements a minimum in order to time more accurately, which I kind of think is its primary function. I hear two-tones coming back in, but it's still not back in for me. So I'd rather try out the ceramic case. So granted, we don't know long-term how well ceramic cases are going to hold up, but obviously it's not going to be scratch magnet because it's ceramic. So I'd go ahead and choose the Bathyscape for those reasons, mostly because I'm more interested in its chronograph technology than what Breitling stuck into this particular watch. Though obviously Breitling, for very little more money, gave you a more valuable metal and gave you more complications. So I definitely could see the attraction to it. I think the Blancpain resonates with me a little bit more.
Well, I mean, I'm a sucker for Breitling. Pretty much anything they do, I always take a look at it. I'm like, okay, or I don't really like that. This harkens back to, I think, one of the problems of Breitling, and that is the what time is it? What time is it?
It's time to buy the Blancpain.
Right. It's. I mean, you're going to get the slide rule with the the Breitlings, the new Superhost and the Heritages are beautiful, but this still harkens back to 2000s Breitling, where it's like, what the hell are you doing? Everything is on there, but what is it supposed to do? It's supposed to be a chronograph, and it does that the least focus, and it's doing it worse than every other complication on there. The calendar is better than the chronograph. I'm going the Blancpain, the Bathyscape.
Really?
Because it is a chronograph first. It's function over form here. And I much prefer the black on black. If you had gone with the Super Chronomat with the black, we might have had a little more waver here. But no, I'm going to go with, if somebody who doesn't know watches might know Breitling, and they might go, "Wow, your watch is really complicated and that looks fancy." But a watch person is going to know with the Bathyscape, and I'm much more happy with that one, I think.
Okay. Interesting.
I totally blew your mind there. Yeah,
I did. I really thought you would side with the Breitling, which I mean, and as BJ noted, it's a chunker.
You picked one of my you picked one of my least favorite ones, and I'm not a big fan of the Super Chronomats in general.
And I think, if I recall, I did look at the black Breitling. The problem was I was trying to keep the dollar amount relatively similar, and I think the black one was all steel and came in thousands less. Whereas I got it almost the same, within just a few $100s. And obviously I had to take the Blanc, Blanc pawn that didn't come on a bracelet. And then this came with a bracelet with steel and gold. And I was just like, sometimes it's such a chore trying to match up chrono to chrono. And I wanted them to be kind of swimmable chronos, because if I wanted to go other chronos, we could turn to things like Zenith and stuff, but then I'd have probably lost a lot of the water resistance. So
like they have the other tough chronomats that are more, they've got like the BO1 movement in them, which is more like the Navi timer movement and things. And I tend to focus more that way when it comes to Breitlings that are fancy.
Yeah. It's Chronomat's an interesting line. I think it's a well-known line of Breitling, but it's not Navitimer well-known. It's not a pillar in that same regard. Yeah. And what they're doing with it, it's interesting, right? Because they're like, okay, we're going to do this. And it's going to be not aviation themed, but it's sort of like, I don't know, like chrono, other complication theme. I'm not quite sure.
That's the problem, right?
I don't know where they're going.
Let's just throw everything at it. And somebody who doesn't know much about watches will buy it.
Oh, the fact that even on their website, and I chose it, but on their website, they do call it the all-purpose watch. So,
what's your purpose?
I don't know. At almost $18,000, I hope it can do all of my purposes. But I will end the poll, and the results are the Bath Escape from Blogpon had 62%. So
wow. Okay.
So ended up winning. So
I'm also surprised by that.
That's right. So that is, we don't need me to be big. All right. So those are all the ToTs. So we've gotten through the episode. So Dave and Tony, do you want to say any final thoughts, final plugs?
Always fun as per usual. I'm a little dry in the winter here, but I was able to be saved by my lovely wife, who only wants rose gold watches.
She loves the rose gold, and Tony made sure to work a plug in on that.
I did.
Exactly. Always fun. I'm David Dennis. I'm from Silverball Chronicles, one of the co-hosts there. You can visit us at silverballchronicles.com, or you can check us out on patreon.com/silverballchronicles. Pinball History Podcast, where we follow all the politics, characters, and shenanigans of pinball history and present. So come on and listen to us. We're an evergreen podcast, so we try to keep away from the news that will get stale and old.
All right, Tony.
I had fun as always. Thank you for bringing me back and putting up with my anti-Rolex bias that might exist somewhat. One of these days, you guys will pick you'll pick my favorite Rolexes. They exist. There are Rolexes that I would grab in an instant.
Sure. It's less entertaining. That's less entertaining.
That's right. True. It's more fun just that you know that they exist. But I'm from the Eclectic Gamers Podcast. Dennis has the show notes. I'm the co-host. We talk about pinball. We are most definitely not evergreen. We are news focused heavily. We also talk about video games, which is definitely not evergreen anymore. It feels like our video game talk is 90% law talk. Like we should be pinball in order. Seems to be where it's going with the sheer amount of news about legal stuff going on in video games anymore. But I can be found there and at all of the Eclectic Gamers links. And it's been a great time. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank the chat for being so lively. I think I only had one stan I ended up having to mute. Go and just downvote the videos you don't like. You don't need to be disruptive to the live stream when I'm doing it. But most people were very good about playing the game and stuff. It's not for everyone, and that's fine. Well, Cloud, I can't make promises about more of the shows. It takes a little bit of time to work up the ToTs. I'm struggling more and more as I try and keep the pricing balanced and not do the same watches I did before. But that's just how it is sometimes. That's the name of the game.
You voted with me, Scott? No, I don't believe that.
Oh wow. Once or twice, maybe. Scotty, Scotty, he can be swayed. He listens to the arguments. He's not just hell-bent on remembering the damage you did before we got into ToTs. Now, he might always be against you on the ToT stuff. I don't know.
You're not in a silo. He's able to be swayed a little bit.
Now, and Scott noted, Ron, and I think I always find this interesting because I do pinball podcasting as well. I just find it interesting because some people call David and some people call David Dennis, so obviously they mean you, David.
Of course,
Ron and Dennis doing an excellent show, Silverball Chronicles, a history of pinball. Very, very fun show. I always look forward to listening to it. And then I like to listen to how long your intro is because I know people are going to complain about how long the intro is. But I listen to it because
I'm throwing little.
Our latest EGP episode, our intro was 30 plus minutes long. And
we had a lot to talk about.
But we warn people, so it's okay. But they can downvote the episode. They just that's what the thumbs are for. You can downvote it. And thank you, BJ, for joining in. And so I'll look at putting another one of these streams together. It just takes a little bit of time with the holidays and stuff. I was just like, can we wedge one in? And David and Tony were kind enough to accommodate me. So thanks everyone who went ahead and stopped by and participated. I do appreciate it. And that'll be it. So until next time, I'll talk to y'all all later.